Amending your garden soil can make a big difference in your garden, and I can prove it. Join me today as I show you how to do a soil test, and I'll show you the results of mine. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and today for my soil test, I'll be using this soil analysis kit from RX Soil. Everything you need is in this box, and it's much simpler than you think it might be. I'm going to just take a sample, put it into the bag, put this box that's already postage paid in the mail, and soon I can expect the results of professional laboratory analysis to tell me the nutrient levels within this garden bed. When I first moved into this house about 3.5 years ago, one of the very first things I did was to have a soil analysis done, long before I built any of these beds and started growing anything. I think it's important for new gardens to identify what your soil has in the way of nutrients. And I discovered that my native soil is deficient in nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, but it does have adequate levels of many of the nutrients that plants need. So while the ground below me is deficient, I'm wondering about the soil that I have in these raised beds, because over the course of the last 3 years, I've added amended soil and then on a regular basis continued to amend that soil. My plants have done great, but I really don't know the nutrient levels within these garden beds. Yes, all around me, my native soil, I know what I have, but in this bed in particular, I want to find out how my amending is working. Do I need to do more amending, and do I need to focus on any particular nutrients? That's where the soil analysis kit comes in. I'm going to take samples from different spots in this garden. I want to brush away mulch and as much of this organic material as I can, and then I'm going to dig down. And I'm going to try to get down 4 to 6 inches and take a sample. Taking just one sample is not enough. You want to take multiple samples from different areas. So within this bed by itself, I want to take between 4 and 6 samples. So I'm going to do 1 on each end, 2 in the middle, and then 1 from each side. And so now, with 6 samples taken, I'll take the bowl inside and we'll move to the next step. I begin by pouring the soil onto some newspaper. The idea here is to spread it out and then try to pull out as many twigs, stones, and roots that I can find. So I'll just pull out these little pieces, put them in the bowl, and try to just leave behind nothing but soil. I let the soil dry out for a couple days, and over the course of that time, I come back periodically and try to get out more of these little bits. They're easier to see as the soil dries. All the little stones, and it's getting pretty close to what I'm after. This soil is about as ready as it's going to be, so now I'll just open up my RX Soil box. And there is a quick set of directions that shows how to do this. I'll take the plastic bag, and I want to go ahead and scoop this soil for testing into the bag. And so I'm after the cleanest soil. And so there's a dashed line on this bag. That's my target for filling it up. And when I get to that line, I'll go ahead and seal this, put it into the box, and this is ready to send in for analysis. There's a sample number on the bag, and on the back of the directions there's the corresponding sample number, and I can go online to not only track the shipment but also see the results when they're available. Just to make sure that this isn't going to open, I'm going to put a piece of tape on it to hold it all together. Now we'll put this in the mailbox. It's been less than 2 weeks and I already have my results. I got an email, clicked on the link in the email, and it's taken me to this page with the soil analysis. And I'm really surprised, in a happy way. The analysis starts with a bar graph that shows the basic state of my soil, from high, optimal, medium, low, and very low. And almost everything runs between the optimal and high, and actually very high levels. This is quite a surprise. My soil pH is much more alkaline than I suspected. It's 8.0, recommended range is 6.2 to 6.8. Organic matter. My target has been to develop a soil with 5% organic matter as a minimum, and that's where I'm at. I'm very happy with that. The capacity to retain nutrients is very high. My phosphorus level, potassium level are also very high. My calcium is just below the optimal range. It's the lowest of anything, but the number's still pretty good. And the other macronutrients like magnesium and sulfur are also high. Very surprising. And then micronutrients are also looking really good. I'll talk in just a minute about nitrogen. There's no nitrogen reading, but there is a recommendation to add nitrogen. And their recommendation is to use blood meal, a nice organic fertilizer. And because of the pH, they're recommending that I use a soil acidifier to bring that pH down to a more appropriate level. And so for this summer, they're saying no soil products are recommended. But in the fall, it could be time to add a soil acidifier, and then I don't have to worry about anything in winter. Next spring, the bed should be in good shape and ready to go. So, the nutrient levels in this bed are very high, above optimal levels, which tells me some very important information. First, all the organic matter that I've been adding to this bed for 3 years now has been very effective in putting the nutrients into this soil. And second, maybe it's time to slow down a little bit. Put the brakes on. I don't need to add more nutrients to this bed. I don't need to do anything to this bed other than start thinking about the pH levels. That makes it easy. 3 years of work now means I can coast a little bit because the soil has the nutrients it needs to support my plants. But what about the nitrogen? Remember, the soil analysis did not include readings for nitrogen. So I contacted the RX Soil folks and asked the question of why nitrogen was not included in the analysis. And what they said is that most agronomics labs that do this type of testing do not include the nitrogen levels of ammonium or nitrate that might be in the soil, because that nitrogen is quite volatile. It can change depending on the temperature of the reading, the moisture content of the reading, the time of day that you take your sample. All of those have a factor in the nitrogen printout that you'll get in the analysis. So rather than trying to mislead you and think that the nitrogen is ample or not, they leave it off the analysis and then operate under the assumption that most garden plants are going to need nitrogen and most garden soils are deficient in that nitrogen. But I'm going to operate using a different assumption. The analysis shows that my bed is high in all of the macronutrients that the plants need, even though the calcium is slightly low. And it's also high in the micronutrients that my plants need. So my assumption at this point is that it's also going to have high levels of the nitrogen I need. Now, nitrogen will leach out of soil over time, and it is volatile, so you're not sure exactly what the readings are. But I live in a pretty dry region. If I were getting heavy rains on a regular basis, I could assume that the nitrogen is leaching out of my beds and into my waterways, which is what causes so many problems with excessive fertilization. Well, I don't get that kind of leaching out of these beds because I don't have those weather patterns. So all this organic matter that's creating all of these wonderful nutrients for my plants is pretty much staying in these beds. The nitrogen should also be staying in these beds. It's an assumption, and you know what happens when you assume. But because all of the other levels are good, this year I'm operating with the benefits of the organic matter telling me that the nitrogen levels are also good. I know that the soil in this part of Colorado tends to be alkaline. I've mentioned that in earlier videos, including the video where I was creating the soil that I needed to grow blueberries in pots. And I used this soil acidifier. It's sulfur. That will bring the pH down. Now, I'm going to be operating under another assumption as well moving forward in this garden season. All of these beds were amended using the same methods and the same basic organic materials. So, this bed is high in nutrients. I'm pretty sure the rest of these beds are very high in nutrients as well. So come fall, I'm not going to be doing any more amending of these beds other than to start dealing with the pH problem. Less work in this area of the garden because I've already put in the work to get these beds up to this point. I love that aspect of amending. It really does pay dividends over time. The soil was ready last year. It's probably better this year, and I'm anticipating next year, again, not doing any more soil amending, but doing more soil analysis so that I don't overdo it, because you can get too many nutrients. If you want to see how I'm amending the beds to get these kind of results, watch this video next. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.